Good evening and welcome to the Zoning and Design Review Board for September 10th, 2013. Just a reminder that all the agendas and staff reports are at the front if you did not get one. We are being broadcast live on Channel 28 and live web streaming on the town's website, and you can also get the agenda and staff reports on the website. Don't forget to turn off your cell phones, everyone. And when you step up, just be sure to introduce yourself completely so everyone at home knows who you are as well. So with that being said, Sandra, we'll do roll call.
Member Scoggins.
Present.
Member Cook. Present. Member Janes.
Here.
Member Laz. Here. Chair Durham.
Here. And we should move for adoption of the agenda. Any changes or any concerns for the agenda? No. Very good. So we want to move to adopt the agenda.
I'll move.
Vice Chair Scoggins moves to adopt the agenda in a second. Thank you, Member Janes. And we will go on to the approval of all our minutes from the last 3 months. Everybody get a chance to read everything?
Yes.
Any questions, changes, or concerns?
No.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
noting that I was absent on June 11th and as well our membership has changed, should we approach these minutes?
Yeah, we'll do them individually. Thank you very much. So let's start with July 9th for everyone except for you, for Member Laz. So do we have a, someone move to adopt that agenda, that minutes?
So moved.
In a second?
A second.
Excellent. And then June, oops, sorry, I went out of order. So we did June 11th, sorry. Now we'll do June 9th, July 9th, sorry. It's already September.
Oh, was that, you started with June, I'm sorry.
I did June 11th, I apologize. And now
Did
July.
we have a vote on that?
Yeah, we just did.
We did?
No, we didn't vote.
I'm sorry.
We had a first and a second?
Yes, I'm sorry. Oof, sorry. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. So June 11th is
You'll note my abstention, Sandra.
perfect.
Yes.
All right, July 9th. Any questions? All right,
I'll make a motion to accept the
Perfect.
agenda.
any second?
I'll second it, I guess.
I wasn't here, but, no, you were absent.
Yep.
So we'll hold off on that.
Aye.
So I'll second it then. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. So that passes?
Yes.
And he abstained.
I'm just trying to help. Okay?
And August 13th minutes, any questions or concerns?
No.
Now you get a vote. All right. Someone want to move to adopt the
Moved.
minutes? Second?
Second.
Vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Let us move on. Perfect timing. I see the public here is here for an item on the agenda, so we will hold off on that. No consent agenda, so we will move straight forward to the 7.1 design review for 8 Ivy Court. Sandra?
Tonight you have before you design review for the re-landscaping of the front yard at 8 Ivy Court. And the landscape used to consist of lawn for most of the yard from the back of sidewalk to the face of building, except for a few shrubs that were adjacent to the building. And the applicant indicated that their desire was to eliminate the high water demand plants and replace them with a drought-tolerant landscape. And that landscape consists of a significant amount of DG, grasses and shrubs that are grouped and spaced, and 3 olive trees, 2 of which are replacement trees for a tree that was removed earlier. And 3 of those olive trees will be, 2 of the trees will be located within the planter strip between back of sidewalk, back of curb and sidewalk, and the other will be located in the main planter. The applicant also has potential plans for other optional elements, which include a 4th olive tree in the planter strip to the south of the driveway, more grasses in the main planter, and a 12-inch tall garden wall that would break up the space. The item is before you for design review, and you normally don't see design review for landscape plans. It usually involves structures or other design elements that trigger the item to bring it before the ZDRB. In this case, we brought the landscape plan before you because of the scope of the changes, the fact that there was live landscaping removed in place of DG, and we couldn't make the determination that it was minor and incidental and could be approved at staff level. So it is before you for design review. And the town code for design standards expresses a preference for drought-tolerant species and those that are native to California. And this application is consistent with those. Other than that, the town's landscape design standards do not offer much guidance to an applicant on what is permissible or not, and it falls back to the design standards. In this case, the applicant did come and speak with staff about the removal of a tree, and so I'd say there was some confusion whether they were aware that they needed approval or not. And both the applicant and staff didn't address the issue, and it was silent at the time of that removal, so we weren't aware of the scope of the changes. The ZDRB at its last meeting discussed the issue of landscape design in more detail, and it specifically addressed the concept of the use of hardscape elements, such as DG, and indicated that perhaps the answer is to set a maximum amount that is allowed, but did voice being open to being flexible as to the amount where the DG is permeable. So it is before you for design review, and staff's really only concern is that live landscaping was removed for the DG, which is a hardscape element. And so we're asking for you to discuss the issue and to make the findings when you approve the project. As a solution, staff is suggesting perhaps that an option could be to add more plants to the main landscape planter and to the planter strip between back of curb and the sidewalk. However, this might not be the only solution that's offered up as an option to you. So we are recommending approval subject to the proposed conditions, and the applicants are here to represent their project.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there any questions of the members of, for Sandra, for staff?
Yes. Sandra, as you just noted, we rarely see landscaping plans when they're not attended to some other development. Kindly direct me to the pertinent section of the ordinance.
I'm sorry.
Kindly direct me to the pertinent section of the ordinance for landscaping.
Well, it would be in the design review chapter that talks about the improvements subject to design review, and it addresses all physical improvements to property. So staff has always interpreted that to be landscaping. Also called out are fencing and signs, so there's no direct.
Let me rephrase the question. I'm not questioning the validity of having a design review process for this project. I'm looking for standards for landscaping.
They are mixed in different chapters, and I don't have my code with me, unfortunately. I couldn't direct you to them. But we basically don't have many, if any at all. There are no standards. There are simply guidelines, and they're so few in number that they don't offer any guidance.
Thank you. That's my only question of staff.
Any other questions of staff?
Well, on the report that you gave us, under design review findings, number 1, it talks about, I mean, that sort of can be applied to landscape, right? Where it will properly and adequately perform or satisfy its functional requirement without being unsightly, creating substantial disharmony with its locale and surroundings.
Right. That's a general design review
Yeah.
finding, not specific to
Not
landscaping.
specific, but it would fall under that.
Right.
Okay.
Anyone else?
None here.
Very good. All right. This time, we'd like to invite the applicant to stand up and speak. And that's all right. Let us, if there's any concerns or
Hello?
comments, please.
Oh. It's a little bit of a unique, new experience for me, so please excuse me. I'm a bit nervous. You guys are very intimidating. Trying to compose myself. So I have a few questions based on just in light of what was discussed right now. Oh, sorry, my name. Paul Murray, 8 Ivy Court. Carrie Murray next to me. My wife. So firstly, I just want to say that our goal is definitely to improve the property. We're not trying to be renegades, create some sort of weird, funky thing. We're not going to put up a pink dinosaur that's 38 feet tall. We're trying to create something that is pleasing to the eye. I don't know, for what it's worth, I was involved in aesthetics and visual design for probably 20 years before I got into computers and programming. That's a whole other thing. So I just want to say I appreciate what you guys are doing and why this all exists and why you guys care about this. So I'm not blind to that and don't think it's completely ridiculous. So that said, we decided to replace the landscaping in the front of the house. It was really old, not well-maintained lawn. It was sort of a strange lawn in terms of lawns. It was very three-dimensional. I think it had a lot of mole activity in there, and so and it was dying quickly. There was no proper irrigation system in there. There was an irrigation system, but it was full of leaks, so some areas would get watered and some wouldn't. So we decided to make it look better. We would remove the lawn and ideally go with something that was more drought tolerant. And something that was easier to maintain. We both have full-time jobs, and cutting the lawn is not really appealing to us yet. So that said, I think we spent about $3,000 to improve the front yard. And how you see it today is very much a starting point for us. It's not our ideal front yard. We want it to look more balanced and have more plants and be a much more harmonious relationship and not just DG. Unfortunately, budget constraints led us to doing phase one, and we just didn't even know this whole process existed and a design review board and any of that, so we just thought we would do that, and then a year from now add more plants, and as we enjoy our years as homeowners, eventually have an amazing looking front yard. We didn't know that this whole process was in place for us to have it look right up front. And I can understand, like, that's a wormhole. People can take advantage of that indefinitely. That's not what we're trying to do. Money was a problem for us. So anyway, the plan we have submitted is our best guess at where next we would like to take it from here. We do think that the olive trees in the tree strip will definitely change the overall perception of the entire front yard. And I was hoping to be able to install those trees and then look at it and say, oh, well, now I can see it needs something here because it's, not right. And so sort of organically let the project happen based on each progressive step. So yeah, the proposed plan is basically what we think we want to do. Obviously, if it gets approved, that's what we will do. Regarding the conditions of approval, I think the wall was not stipulated as a condition. Is that correct? Okay. So the wall is an element we definitely want to add, because before we figure out what else to do with the DG, we figure the wall would be a nice sort of visual element, and it would really reduce the amount of DG you can see. The other condition is the one that concerns me most, and that is with putting more greenery in the tree strip. That was our initial plan. We were inspired by Bardessono. I think they have olive trees or something, and then they have little low green shrubs, or I don't even know what they're called, plants. but they also have really well hidden little black plastic irrigation heads that are there that automatically water the plants, and so it seems to be very easy. And for us, that was a problem too. That's why we didn't put more items out there, as we would have had to have gone under the sidewalks to install irrigation to water the strip out there. I'm sure you can water it by hand. In my limited research, riding my bicycle around the neighborhood, I've seen that most properties that have tree strips that are not automatically irrigated have wasteland tree strips. It just dies, and if it's not dead, it was never live in the first place. It's usually faded old mulch that's out there, which personally I'm not mad about. Maybe other people like that, but I don't want mulch that's dead or faded. I guess that's sort of all I have. I don't have a lot to say other than, I don't know anything about, and Jason Janes was bringing this up. I don't know where to find, or I haven't been able to find anything that stipulates exactly what kind of landscaping we have. So I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. I looked at the single-story residential district, which is where our house is located, and I saw that online. There was one document that seemed to pertain to that, and it had a design guidelines section, and it had wording like, we encourage drought-tolerant plants. So I just don't know if that means you have to have drought-tolerant plants. We read that and we felt like we were actually participating in that. I mean, we want to do the right thing. But as far as what type of plants in the tree strip, the irrigation came up, and I just thought, I don't want dead plants out there. We'll put the trees in, and then we'll revisit that later. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. And that was, I heard, I don't know if it was Jason Janes who mentioned it, about possibly stipulating a proportion of DG versus other things. In our yard, if we built the small wall, it wouldn't reduce the overall mathematical amount of DG in the yard, but visually it would probably drastically reduce the amount of DG you can see. So I don't know if, when you start talking about proportions, I can only assume that it's what is visually what's visible, but I don't know. It sounds like this is a proposed direction to go in, where you actually have a specific percentage and as a guideline. So I'm sure you guys have thought of all of this, but to me it seems that what you see would be what determines whether those proportions are there or not, versus, if you got on Google Maps and you saw that the proportions were off. Most people don't fly by your house, I suppose. Anyway, I'm waffling. Do you want to say anything? Anything to Kat? Oh, do you guys ask me questions?
We can, if anybody.
Oh, no, please, I'm done. I'm talking in circles. I have nothing
Sorry.
else. So.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Yes. How do you propose to irrigate the trees until they're established?
By hand. But once they're established, I believe I can leave them alone. Hopefully that's true. I don't know. Yeah. I was going to Google it.
That's my only question.
Any other questions?
I have one question, just in regards to the plants that you have in the front here, the lower bushes, I guess. you
Yeah.
call 'em. What is the size of those upon?
They're supposed to end up at about between, I think, 12 to 18 inches, sort of square. They're Elijah blue. They don't seem to be doing great. I spent probably $400 on those plants, and so we'll see. They are irrigated, so they're getting enough water, but it's been really hot lately, so Kerry's got out and been watering a few that are turning kind of white, so But we were hoping that they would fill out. The DG in between the plants was really not something we were going after visually. We just thought it would all fill in. We just don't know how much of it is going to fill in over time. We were very new to this whole landscaping thing.
Any other questions?
No.
One question, Paul. How long have you lived here at this?
3 years.
3 years.
Oh, it'll be 3 years in December.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
With that, I'll note that we all, the board received a letter from a neighbor, Susan Cole, concerning the landscaping. And felt that the applicant should be able to move forward with their plans and how they want to do it, so. With that being said, we'll close it to the comments then, to the public comments, and we will have a little discussion. Who would like to start? We'll give you a break, being you haven't
Thank
been here. Commissioner James?
Sure. Before we begin a discussion, I'd like to just state briefly what sort of my philosophy is. From time to time, we encounter applications like this that in effect grow out of a code enforcement. It's long been my view that we're not a code enforcement body. That is not to say I don't think there is a role for code enforcement. That's handled administratively. Whether there are penalties or not, I don't think concerns us. We're not the appellate body if someone is appealing a penalty. So my point being, I try to look at projects like these as though we were seeing them unbuilt, and neither be prejudicial to the applicant because it's already been built, but it's also a sword that cuts both ways, nor do I think we should be forgiving and grant accommodation, recognizing that a person might have to unwind something that's unbuilt. In effect, what we have is an application where we can see some of the results as built. So try to thread that needle. Before I give my view, I do have a follow-up question to staff. Design review approvals are good for 5 years, correct?
Correct.
To the best of my knowledge, there's no mechanism compelling one to act any sooner than that, correct?
That's right,
Other
right.
than, say, a certificate of occupancy or a final inspection when that's required.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to submit that we can, to the extent that timing and expense is a concern, stipulate our conditions to grant the applicant a reasonable period of time to complete it. Perhaps not 5 years, but I think it would be reasonable to suggest the project can be phased. I say that because A, I think the work in the franchise strip, the olive trees, that needs to be elevated in importance. That's public property. I further think an appropriate condition is to have some additional planting in the franchise strip. I think Bartizono is a great example. It also fits what's behind it and its neighborhood. I know it can be difficult, but you can undermine the sidewalk, I've done it, and get that tubing out there. So I think there should be a handful of plants in the franchise strip. With the rest of the area, we do wish to encourage xeriscape. I do think there needs to be some additional planting around the perimeter and near the house. I'm not a landscape architect. I'm open to a proposal that perhaps could be seen at staff level, but it would seem to me objectively that there should be about half again as many plants artfully placed in that yard, in addition to, as I say, some additional planting in the franchise strip, particularly, and it can be centered with the trees, much like Bartizono does. That concludes my recommendations.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook?
A couple different things come to mind. I applaud you guys for taking out the lawn and approaching the water-tolerant plantings. I think that's important to do these days. I can also see that you've put a very artistic touch on it, and I think that's really eye-catching, that it's done in a way that isn't just plants plopped around. I mean, there's definitely a plan with a lovely touch. I personally agree that I would like to see more planting so that it fits in the neighborhood, but I'm not sure that I feel comfortable mandating it without a specific ordinance giving us the directions to do that. You know, I mean, I feel people can do those kind of things in their own front yard and plant what they want within, I don't know what parameters. I mean, it's too vague. His point of going online, he should be able to go online and look and see what the directions are. I agree with our meeting of our last meeting where we talked about this, where we talked about there being a percentage without specifying certain plants. And I think that's an important step for us to take as a town, but until that's in place, I don't feel comfortable mandating it. My only other comment would be about the planter strip. I do not necessarily agree that there needs to be plants out there, is my opinion, because so much of the other parts of the street there seem to have had the planter strip pave over. So to me, having a couple trees is kind of the in-between part between the people with mulch and the people who have paved over. So I don't find it necessary to have plants. So I think that's it. Those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Les? You can bring that up, that you with work, just bring up, just say that you work for the same,
Okay.
that
I
you're not
just-
reporting to the same.
Yeah,
That's
I
me.
just, in recent discussion, it should be brought up that I do know Carrie through work. We work for different companies, but under the same umbrella, so I just thought that should be notated or mentioned to all of you. Well, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, it was probably important to bring up. In light of this, I took a ride to see what the lawn looked like, because I didn't know, other than this draft and the description. I wanted to see what it looked like myself, because it looks pretty abstract on this diagram. And I think it looks really good. And I think that driving in your cul-de-sac, or in their cul-de-sac, there was a lot of bad. And so I was like, wow, this is like the nice one in the neighbor 4 doors down who has no lawn and like absolute concrete. I don't even think it's TG. I recognize that under constraints that you have with budget, I can't find this one, that you plan to add on to the different, onto your lawn with the different phases as you are able to. So I am in agreement with you in terms of kind of a, maybe not necessarily you have 5 years to get this done, but something that's a little bit more in line with completion. And that can be determined, I guess, up to you, because we don't have anything set in place. But overall, I thought it looked quite nice, I have to say. It did look sparse, but it didn't look out of place in light of all the new construction that's been going on and seeing all the new landscaping. Yeah, that's it.
Commissioner Scoggins?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Kimberly that I appreciate your efforts in kind of the environmental approach to your front yard. So kudos there. I asked the question earlier about the size of the plants now versus what they'll be in the future, and I think that's important to keep in context. So I drove by the property. I think that with the addition of the trees and the time of landscaping to grow in, that the way it is today is, I would say it looks relatively fine to me. And it sounds like your neighbors, I've talked to 1 or 2 of your neighbors in addition to this letter, that don't have any problem with it. But I would say that to Commissioner James's point, the phase, based on budget and things of that nature, I think we should, there needs to be some trees, in my opinion, or there needs to be more to the property. So based on your plan, I would give you my approval, but it has to, in my opinion, it has to happen in the next relatively, less than 5 years.
Yeah, yes, just please come up to the mic so everyone can hear you.
Just side note or something worth mentioning is that Sandra was very kind to work with us. We, when we applied for the tree removal permit, and I guess it's actually all stated in the description, but we were approved for a alternate required tree, a Wilsoni olive, and so we located those. They were within our budget, so we're ready to plant those, and pending the outcome of all of this, we'll, next week we can put those in. So those are not 5 years down or 3 years down the road or anything.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I would just be redundant at this point.
Very good. Very good. So it's interesting to me because we all have our thoughts and opinions, but there is unfortunately nowhere where we can all say where our thoughts and opinions are based on. In terms of direct guidance and exacting parameters to work within. As opposed to what happened at our last meeting, it's encouraging that this applicant has researched and been in discussion with you and has researched the project as well, and that's very, I think that says a lot as well. But there's no real standards or guidelines, and that's a bit frustrating for me sitting here to make any sort of recommendation whatsoever, even of saying they need to have their yard done in 3 years. There's no guidelines that says it has to be that way. So that's where my confusion lies. For the planting strips, I live next to the church. They trample over my planting strip every single Sunday for 4 straight hours. So I think it's a give and take as to where the best area is and what, hence it's not planted. I think we all need to see each individual situation when it comes to the planting strip, and once again, that opens up the fact that there's no set standards or guidelines. Also, there was, I don't know the address, but it's Mr. Altamira's house. There's been extensive landscaping going on there for quite some time with fences, palm trees. And to be honest, I've yet to see or hear anything about it. And you and I have discussed it before, but that's where my confusion lies, is that they're here, but he puts a 20-foot tree, more than a 20-foot tree, 2 of them in the yard, but we don't see that here. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's where my confusion lies. So with that being said, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know if someone wants to make a motion, but I don't know where that's going to go. I have what everybody has said here and justed it down in terms of additional planting in the franchise strip, additional plants in the yard, phase in the project. So that's what I have. So
Well, we would
I'm
be
a little
looking for a
confused.
motion from someone who wants to propose any of the items that you discussed here. Adding to or eliminating conditions of approval recommended by staff.
Anyone? Any member able to do that? Or wanting to do that?
Just a second, please.
Yeah, no, it's a long one. Well, how do we, process-wise, I mean, there's a disagreement. Some people think we should have plantings in the planting strip, and some people said we don't. So, depending on who says the motion, it goes with or without planting strips, and you agree with everything but that part, how does that process work?
Oh, if we don't second it, then it moves on.
Well,
and we-
strictly speaking, our rules of order don't require a second, but if there are 3 aye votes for a motion, and as a courtesy, we generally seek a second, it passes. So you kind of have to take the baby and the bathwater together. But a motion that fails, whether due to lack of second or 3 aye votes, that doesn't preclude another motion from being presented. So the key maybe is to craft a motion that you think 2 other people will support.
We'd like to be a little flexible, but please step up to the mic. But you need to come up to them. Yes, please, so people at home can hear you, and everyone here.
I'm also not a fan of this, speaking at the microphone, but I know it's a technicality, I'll just say that the whole process of having to come before all of you, it's actually kind of embarrassing to have to do this when it's just a couple of plants. This is our first home, we're just trying to get it set up, and it's a technicality, but the lawn was actually completely dead. So when you're saying we removed live landscaping, it was dead. We watered it for about 2 years. It was, I don't remember what year the house was built, but it was essentially a 50-year-old lawn that we knew needed to be scraped. So we could have just left it and not had to go through this process, but we are trying to improve it, and that's really all I'm trying to say, is that I actually don't feel that we should even have to be here justifying our decisions at all. And Paul actually asked me not to say anything because he just wants to move forward with the process. But just think from the standpoint of a newcomer for our first home, you know, we're not even, I would say, halfway done with it, and all the neighbors are coming over like it's a reality TV show weighing in on what they think we should be doing. And I don't actually feel like I should have to discuss any of that with them, and they're trying to be friendly and supportive, but we're just trying to finish it. And I do appreciate the support everyone's shown, but I'm just saying for future cases, I feel like we're being retroactively kind of singled out when I know many people just do what they want to do, and because we had a tree that we went to the city for the paperwork for, that's why we're here at all. So that's really my 2 cents, and thank you.
Thank you. So does any commissioner have a motion to put forward?
It's challenging when you don't
So,
have what you just said, basically.
correct.
So, I mean, I'll put forward the motion that we allow them to go forward with the plans that they've submitted, based on the fact that we don't have anything to, why are we saying no to them?
Anyone else? A second? So is that your motion?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
And I'll abstain. Then it passes.
Go for it.
All right?
As presented without the conditions.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for coming. All right. So let's, Sandra, with that being said, will 7.2 be coming to us at some point?
I don't know whether it's been permanently withdrawn
Okay.
or whether they'll be coming back.
Very good. All right, then we shall move on to 8, presentation and discussion.
Sure.
All right.
Oh, there are no presentation and
Very good,
discussion.
very good. Then we'll move to number 9, staff and board reports, the ad hoc committees, which we moved to this meeting so that everybody could be present.
You should stick around for this.
Sorry. You're more than welcome to sit here and listen to our ad hoc committee, but you're more than welcome to leave. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
So included in your packets was the current listings of the 3 different ad hoc committees in which members were on those committees. As you can see, there's 1 vacancy on each of the 3. And I thought I'd describe those generally so that the 3 newest members can have an opportunity to, I guess, nominate themselves or express interest for whichever committee
not-
they would like to serve on.
Did not member Cook already express an interest in the bylaws committee?
Yes, and
We wanted to wait till
Bylaws one.
everyone was here, so,
Procedures.
go on.
And so we'll then take the recommendations to the town council on October 15th, and we can start the work on the committees thereafter. So Member James is correct that Member Cook expressed interest in serving on the ZDRB committee, and that's a committee that will look at the ZDRB bylaws. It will look at the authority of the ZDRB and whether it should be expanded to so that it has a role of a more typical planning commission or not, and any issues related to its authority, essentially. Another committee is the Historic Resources Ad Hoc Committee, and that committee has had one meeting already. We're simply waiting for the vacant member to be, the vacancy to be filled so that we can have the next meeting. That group is looking at whether the town would benefit from a historic resources element of the general plan, whether there should be standards and duties of those who own historic properties, and it's also looking at potentially doing a historic plaque program for the different residential and commercial properties, voluntary or mandatory, we don't know. It's just getting started. The third committee is the Zoning and Design Ordinance Amendment Committee, and that committee has mostly completed its work. It proposed new standards for the Old Town Historic Design District, and that committee does have future items on the agenda, potentially holiday lighting, outdoor music that can be heard from the street, but that committee is pretty much on hold now that we're moving into the Historic Resources Committee. That will be the most active one probably over the next year. So I open it to you all to discuss.
I think you should create another vacancy and remove me from the Zoto committee so that someone else takes a crack at it. We have essentially 3 new members who I'm sure are eager to join the committee, and I've had my turn more than I should have had, so I will gladly step aside, and in fact, I do.
Okay, there are now 4 spots open.
I would be interested in being involved in historic resources, but I really don't know how much of a time commitment that is. So I don't know if it's something more to bring on that I can do feasibly, time-wise.
It's not. It's a little bit of research, but it's information you're going to receive ahead of time. And just,
And how often are the meetings then?
They're as determined as needed, probably no more than once a month, probably more infrequently than that. We'll tend to
Is that a
schedule them
mutual-
at the end of the day, after work.
Is it at a mutually agreeable time?
It is.
Okay.
Are we supposed to just say?
Okay.
So that one's full. I'll step in where Jason just left then, I guess,
Okay,
if that helps, Sandra.
it does. It looks
Good.
like we already had a vacancy on that Zoto committee, so if there's someone willing to sit on 2 committees.
You don't want to get off the committee.
Chair Durham?
I'm already on 2.
You already.
You're going to push me on 3?
That's not fair.
Wait till you see Joe.
So that's not fair. We have 5 people for 6 spots, right? Okay. I tried.
Okay,
All right, very good.
all right.
So I unscribbled your name? All right, very good.
You want me to do another one?
No,
No,
you're
he
good.
just stepped up
Jason,
on that
will
one,
you-
so we're fine.
I'm sorry.
He applied himself.
Unless you can fill 2 spots on the same.
I
Can you
know.
do that? Your vote would be worth twice anyone else's.
I like the power grab. Good.
And I don't really have any other staff reports unless you're interested in learning about something that's happening in town or have questions.
Is the town's construction project exempt from construction signage limitations?
Yep.
No. Please just describe what you observed,
It's a little large.
size of the sign. Well, we put that big sign up because we've had people do some strange things. People ride in on their bikes when it's clearly under construction, walk up to the front door, sometimes elderly people. So we've tried to make it obvious to people. It didn't start out with that sign. It was done after we'd encountered a few issues with the public. Because the gates are open during the workday.
So the discussion we had about, that was relevant to this design project with the zero landscaping and the recommendation of a percentage of plants, is that going to go to the town council?
It
And then
is.
They
Yeah.
will decide if they want to make an ordinance, or they will just decide what it will be?
I think we'll take your recommendations and try to incorporate those into a draft ordinance so they have something to look at, and take it to them in that manner. It'll probably be introduced to them on one occasion, allow them to comment, incorporate any revisions, and then bring it back to them.
That makes sense. Okay.
What's the time frame for that?
I'm done.
All right.
Anyone else? Shall we make a motion to adjourn?
I don't want to.
No, Jason?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right. And we shall adjourn.